just considering what has been happening in our nation this week, I felt very drawn to the Genesis passage, which is another of our lectionary texts this morning. Now, there are several points I want to bring up out of this passage that are going to help us navigate to what I believe God has for us this morning. And the first thing that we need to know is this is a really familiar text. I'm sure most of us have heard it before. And so it's really important for us to break down some of the Hebrew words that are in this text. And I say that because we really do get lost in the translation. And if we can go back to the original meaning of the text, it just adds a layer and a level of depth to this text that we miss otherwise. So the first phrase that I want us to look at is this idea of a formless void. When you look at those two words in the Hebrew and you push them together, you can describe this formless void as chaotic nothingness. Chaotic nothingness, which you might be sitting there and saying, that's interesting. If it's nothing, how can it be chaotic? And so one way I like to think of this, and I'm sure there are many meanings, and I don't consider myself a Hebrew scholar, but to me, when I hear chaotic nothingness, it means a lack of meaning and intention, and intention that is inherent in chaos. There's no meaning, there's no significance to it. It is just chaotic, and there's nothing there that forms any sort of intention or meaning. The second word I want to highlight is in the text where it says, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. When you look at that word wind in the Hebrew, it's the Hebrew word ruach, which means breath, wind, or most importantly, spirit. And a lot of translations do translate it as spirit. So we have not just the wind from God, but we have the Spirit of God. And it's so important for us to see this, because if we can see this as the Spirit, the very presence of the third member of the Trinity, it just brings a wealth of meaning to the text. And I think this is so important to remember because there's this sense of community between the members of the Trinity, this three-in-oneness, this perichoresis, or divine dance that we witness in the beginning. Sometimes I think we think about Christ and the Spirit don't come until after creation, but this text shows us that they have always been. And I think that's really important for us to attempt to grasp. The last word I want us to look at is when it says that a wind from God swept over the chaotic waters. That phrase swept over in the Greek is rachaf, and it means relax and also hovering. And in this hovering, there's a sense of fertilization that happens. It's also important to note that this verb that's used in this text is only used 2 other times in the Old Testament. And I think the most important use that we can compare this to is in Deuteronomy, in which that same verb, rachaf, which means to hover or to brood, is used to describe a mother bird who's hovering over her young. So there's this nurturing, this fertilization, this hovering that the Ruach is doing over the watery chaos. So you just had your Hebrew lesson for the week. Good job. So it's important for us to understand these words because words do matter and they bring something so much deeper into the text. So if we can see this wind as the Spirit, what we observe is that the Spirit is at work before the Creator God speaks. And I think that's also extremely important for us to keep in mind. It's so significant. What we see is that the Spirit is not afraid to mother, to nurture, to fertilize the chaotic waters. It's almost as if the Spirit is preparing the way, nurturing, fertilizing, hovering, brooding, mothering, preparing for the Creator God to speak order into the chaos.